Let's get ready to rumble!
Off the bat, I want to say R.I.P. to the former WBA heavyweight champion Michael Dokes, who probably in the last day or last 24 hours has passed away with cancer. So R.I.P. to Michael Dokes. I'm not going to go too much into the Olympics because I pointed that out the other day about the scoring system and the corruption. And I have watched a bit of it because I like seeing boxers do their thing. But the actual system, no. It's not a good look. The scoring is abysmal. And if you watch it on TV, have you noticed what they started doing now? You cannot even see when the judges are pressing the scoring shots in. They give you the score when the round ends of who won. But you know why they've done that? They've done that so you and I can't see the basic BS that they call a scoring system. That way you can't see all the flaws as it happens. That way you can't see the corruption of the scoring system. Because I remember watching that shit. And you're looking at the two fighters of the boxing, and all of a sudden, one of them throws some meaningless punches, and all of a sudden, 4 points register on the scoreboard. And then you see one of the opponents doing some really good work, and none of the shots register. And Teddy Atlas, he's done an article on it, and he's talking about how the AIBA, which is probably the main board for amateur boxing in the world, he's talking about how bad an organization they are. And he talks about how the Olympics are breaking fighters' hearts and flushing them down the toilet because of the system that they currently have in place. He also points out that the BBC were reporting stories about how gold medals were being possibly bought. That was just last year. So, and that seems to be a story that they're just sweeping under the carpet now.
He's a fucking thief.
And in the panel, they're asked how would they improve the standard of officiating in the Olympic boxing tournament. Eddie Mustafa Muhammad, he says it would be hard as boxing is very tarnished at every level. We've seen that over the years and we see it today also. As long as money is involved, we'll keep seeing these problems. Glenn McCrory, he says they should go back to the old school system of scoring by rounds similar to the pros. Ronnie Shields, he says the same thing. And John Conte says some of the decisions during the Olympics have been ridiculous and that a new system needs to be put in place. They also asked, can Deontay Wilder bring back the good times to American heavyweight boxing? Eddie Mustafa says he's doing a lot of talking now. He needs to step up the level of his competition and show what he's all about. Eddie also says he has the size and power to achieve a lot. Glenn McCrory says, I hope he does, although it's a hard job and a big task. The USA needs some exciting fighters to come in and make an impact in the heavyweight division. Ronnie Shields says, yes, he's the one right now. He should take his time and gradually pick up the level of his opposition. And there's no need for him to rush in and fight a Klitschko. John Conte says it's a possibility because there's certainly talent in the USA heavyweight scene. It's just the boxing coaches are yet to unearth it recently. Boxing Beats and Rhymes says, have you noticed the only sport in the 2012 London Olympics coming under heavy controversy for the way it's being officiated and ran is boxing. Only sport that I can think of. If there's any others, let me know. That's all I'm going to say about the Olympic boxing tournament. That's all I'm going to say on that. And as for Deontay Wilder, so far so good.
With a right, left, you're toothless. And then you say, God damn, they ruthless.
In the letters are divided in saying that Audley Harrison is a bad opponent for David Price, and some people saying it's a good match. Ron Hill writes in to say after 40 years as an MC for the ABA that he's calling it a day. He's seen the likes of Nigel Benn, Henry Wharton, Ricky Hatton, Lennox Lewis, who are some of the combatants that he's refereed in his time. Max Winberg, he writes in to contest a Bob Me article saying that Amir Khan is proud. And Max says, really, if this was so true, he would have insisted on a revenge fight with Bradis Prescott. Very true. Very, very true. Very true. Luke Campbell, he tweeted in to celebrate his success in reaching the quarterfinal. That was last week, and he's actually won the gold medal since, so well done to Luke. Joe Gallagher is saying he's feeling very inspired, and so are his fighters when everybody gets back to work on Monday at the Gallagher gym. Matthew Macklin is looking forward to sparring 4 weeks from now until he fights on a Vegas bill on September the 15th. I'm not sure what bill that is. And Stephen Max at Stephen Max Boxing says he's never seen somebody run as fast as Usain Bolt. The readers' poll is quite predictable this week. Has the boxing officiating been fair at London 2012? And 60% say no, and 40% say yes. Tom Breeden, he says there have been some horrific shows of incompetence by both the referees and the judges. Daniel Vano, he says overall yes. For the majority, the right person has gone through to the next round, but there has been some shocking decisions. David Tarbuck, he says the point scoring system is all wrong, and it's a daft way to score. Even the judges get confused. That's why some of the decisions have been so bizarre. Luke Calhoun, he says you can't please everyone. It's been more consistent than some of the recent professional bouts. The 10 count recalls some of the forgotten heavyweight contenders of the 80s. At number 1 was Carl the Truth Williams. The Truth was as gifted as any heavyweight of his era. He possessed an excellent jab, fast hands and good power. But when caught on the chin, he would almost certainly fall. He gave Larry Holmes hell in 1985. But against Mike Weaver, Tyson, Frank Bruno and Tommy Morrison, his chin let him down. At number 2, Ronaldo Snipes. He looked to have knocked out Larry Holmes in 1981, only for the great champion to regain his composure by slamming his own head off the corner post. Snipes lost eventually in 11 rounds, but remained in and around the top 10 until 1993. Yeah, I remember that one. He gave Holmes a good fight. I don't remember the slamming against the head post incident with Holmes, but I remember that Snipes did nearly take him out. And I remember the referee should not have stopped the fight when it was stopped, because you could argue that Holmes was in worse trouble when Snipes put him on the deck. But I guess that's history now. At number 3, Jose Ribalta is one of Mike Tyson's toughest pre-Buster Douglas bouts. Ribalta lasted until the 10th round of the 1986 scrap. There was talk of a rematch until the Cuban lost to Tim Witherspoon 4 years later. I had this guy on my Facebook as one of my friends called Queensberry Rules. And Jose Ribalta was one of his friends. And I can't remember what the topic was. But me and Ribalta, obviously it's not beef, it's an internet thing, you know what I mean? But we was going back and forth about the Tyson fight. And he was saying how the referee shouldn't have stopped it because he was in the fight and he was going to win the fight. And that the authorities were ganging up against him to preserve Tyson's unbeaten record. And I was saying, look, I respect you. You're a good heavyweight fighter. You was a good heavyweight fighter in your time. And you gave Tyson his first hard contest. Yeah? No doubt about that. You went 10 rounds. You landed some good shots against Mike. You did your thing. But to say you was ever in the contest is highly exaggerated, man. You know what I mean? Mike floored you 3 times or 3 or 4 times. He nearly stopped you on 4 occasions before he finally did stop you in the 10th. So I wasn't having a go at Ribalta. I was just clearing up the reality of his situation. And to be honest, if I had gave Tyson his first test, I might have exaggerated some of the story as well, you know what I mean? No doubt. At number 4, Tyrrell Biggs, the 1984 Olympic gold medal winner, would have likely won a title if Tyson hadn't been rampaging through the landscape. Biggs was talented and tough, but his 1987 shot at Tyson came too soon, and he was brutalized in 7 rounds. Biggs never regained his confidence after that fight. At number 5, James Quick Tillis, an excellent fighter who was expected by many to be too slick for the then WBA heavyweight champion Mike Weaver, but he lost over 15 rounds. Despite several defeats, Tillis was one of the most respected heavyweight ring technicians of his era. At number 6, David Bay. After upsetting Greg Page in 1984, the Philadelphian failed after challenging Larry Holmes for the heavyweight title and was thoroughly beaten in 10 rounds. At number 7, James Broad, a member of the 1980 US Olympic team that never was. Broad had dreadful discipline problems and was always in atrocious shape. In his 3rd fight, he beat James Bone Crusher Smith, who was making his debut. At number 8, Marvis Frazier. He beat Joe Bugner, Ribalto, Broad, Tillis, and Smith during a 4-year reign in the heavyweight rankings. Sadly, he's only remembered for being knocked out by Holmes and Tyson. At number 9, we have Orlin Norris. Late in the decade, he was a top 5 contender with fast hands and good skills. But he was too small. Losses to Burt Cooper and Tony Tucker forced him down to cruiserweight, where he won the WBA title. And at number 10, Mike Williams. This body beautiful was the Ring Magazine's 1986 Prospect of the Year, but Buster Douglas effectively finished him as a force in 1988.
Protect yourselves at all times.
I gotta give props, regardless of what I think of Olympic boxing, to Anthony Joshua, Nicola Adams and Luke Campbell for taking gold for Team GB. Big up on ourselves, saying. And now we go to the hit and the miss section. Number 1 in the hit section is women's boxing. The females belatedly make their Olympic debut, just a mere 104 years after their male peers, and they put on some good fights. At number 2 is Floyd Mayweather. Money was released from jail a month early for good behavior, and now he can get back to his core activity, which is boxing. At number 3 is the Magdaleno brothers. Jesse and Diego both won inside the distance recently, and they are continuing their rise through the rankings. At number 4 is Deontay Wilder. The former Olympic medalist from Alabama recently notched his 24th early victory. And in the miss section we have Dillian Whyte, who comes in at number 4. The Brixton heavyweight hopeful has snagged himself a sparring gig with Vitaly Klitschko just before the Ukrainians' defense against Manuel Char. At number 3 we have Robert Deakin, who is a boxer from Crawley in the UK. He's had his license suspended by the Boxing Board of Control and he is appealing. At number 2 is the AIBA. The World Amateur Governing Body has presided over reverse decisions and some appalling officiating at the London Olympic Games. At number 1 is US Amateur Boxing. Even the reinstatement of Errol Spence cannot hide the superpower's lack of success in the ring. I just want to know why Dillian Whyte sparring with Vitaly Klitschko would be in the miss section. If anybody knows why, please let me know, because I don't get it. Now, you hear me going on about Team USA in 1984 quite a lot, and I'm going to keep going on about it, yeah? Because the team was so fucking good. Let me read out Team USA in 1984. Light flyweight, Paul Gonzalez won the gold medal and the Val Barker Trophy for outstanding boxer. He went on to become a pro, and he lost his only world title challenge to Orlando Canizales. Tough break to have to fight Orlando Canizales. He was a good fighter back in the 90s. Very good fighter, and the 80s. At flyweight, Steve McCrory. He won the gold in 1984. Trained at the Kronk Gym. He was the younger brother of Milton McCrory. He lost to IBF bantamweight champion Jeff Venich in 1986. And he died from a undisclosed illness in 2000 at the age of 36. This I didn't know. At bantamweight, Robert Shannon, the only member of the team not to win a medal. I think he went on to become a pro, but not a legend, obviously. At featherweight, Meldrick Taylor won the gold medal. He went on to become a professional fighter and win belts at 2 weight divisions. Off my head, that would be light welter and welterweight. Lightweight, Pernell Whitaker, gold medal. Not even going to read out his resume, yeah? Because if you're reading this column and you don't know, then you don't need to be checking for our blog no more. Because, Pernell Whitaker, that's all I'm going to say, yeah? Light welterweight, Jerry Page, gold medal. The forgotten Olympian had a short, uneventful pro career. He still believes he would have beaten Sugar Ray Leonard if they had fought as amateurs. Welterweight, Mark Breland, gold medal. Breland lost 1 time in 111 amateur bouts. Once! He was also the world amateur champion and had a record-breaking winning streak of winning 5 Golden Gloves. He won titles at welterweight and light middle as a professional. Light middleweight, Frank Tate, gold medal. He went on to become the IBF middleweight champion as a professional. Middleweight, Virgil Hill, silver medal. He went on to become a professional. He won the world light heavyweight title from, what's his name? My memory banks is doing this one. No box rec, Leslie Stewart. That's right. A West Indian fighter. I remember it now, yeah, and he knocked out Leslie Stewart. I didn't even realize this. Virgil defended his WBA belt 20 times, man. Bloody hell. Evander Holyfield, bronze medal. Only because he either floored or hurt the New Zealand guy he was fighting. And instead of moving back, he hit him on the break. By accident. And they shouldn't have really took his medal. But it is what it is. Bronze medal. And once again, I am not going through Evander Holyfield's resume. If you don't know it, you need not to be following boxing, or you need to do some serious research. Henry Tillman, heavyweight, gold medal. He went on to become a professional, not very accomplished as a professional was Henry. He did beat Mike Tyson twice as an amateur, and one of the victories actually cost Tyson a place in the Olympic squad in 1980. I remember Tyson knocking him out in 1 round as a professional, and I remember Evander Holyfield beating up on him as a cruiserweight as a professional too. Apparently, I can't remember these stories, Henry was tried and acquitted of murder in 2002 and convicted of credit card fraud in 2004. And at super heavyweight we have Tyrell Biggs, who won the gold medal. Biggs challenged Tyson for the heavyweight world championship in 1987, but he was plagued with drug and alcohol addiction throughout his pro career. My memory's a bit hazy, but I do remember Tyrell Biggs actually beating Lennox Lewis as an amateur. That's how good he was. Now tell me if that isn't a star-studded lineup. Look how much gold medals and look how much great pros came out of there. Meldrick Taylor, Pernell Whitaker. Even the likes of Breland was good. Frank Tate was a good pro. Virgil Hill. Evander Holyfield.
I'm Sonny Liston, I'm Jack Dempsey, there's no one like me. I'm from Nairclaw, there's no one that can match me. My style is impetuous, my defense is impregnable, and I'm just ferocious. I want your heart, I want to eat his children. Praise be to Allah.
Mike Tyson's one-man shows, stroke plays are apparently making a big splash. His latest Broadway play, titled The Undisputed Truth, is supposed to be really good. The show had a short run in Las Vegas, but was opened up for a more extended version of 12 showings at the Long Acre Theatre in New York City. Spike Lee makes his Broadway debut as a director of the one-man show, where Tyson discusses and mocks the likes of Robin Givens, Don King, and Mitch Green, amongst others. He talks about the rape case, which he served 3 years for, a crime he says he didn't commit. He Talks about the incident with Teddy Atlas where Teddy pointed a burner to Mike's head for acting improperly towards his niece. He talks about his boxing career, primarily about the loss to Buster Douglas and the Evander Holyfield rematch. He talks about Costamato, his mentor, who he admits is a man who scared him the most. He talks about the deaths of his mother, his sister, and his daughter, and how that impacted on him. Tyson brings a lot of black humor, whatever that means, to the table, but at no time is any of it racist. The play allows us to see the human side of Mike Tyson as he embarks on a new journey in his life. And Tyson, the performer, is excellent. And he definitely has a future in the entertainment industry if he chooses to go that route. Regardless if I think Nonito Donaire should be fighting Guillermo Rigondeaux, he's still taking on hard fights, you know, like I think Jeffrey Mafubela, if I pronounce that right, was a bit underrated by many of us, thinking that Donaire would just walk for him. And it looks like he's got an equally tough fight against Toshiaki Nishioka. I mean, there's two guys who have belts with recognized organizations in a row. So credit due to Donaire. There's no doubt about that. No disrespect to Manny Pacquiao, but talking about Pacquiao just becomes boring, you know. Is he going to fight Bradley, Marquez, or Cotto, you know, treading over old ground? And when I say treading over old ground, I don't mean the Bradley fight. I mean, if he's not fighting Floyd, Bradley is a no-brainer, isn't he? Let's not get deluded by thinking that it was such a bad robbery that he shouldn't want to get his belt back. In my opinion, John Murray, a British lightweight, hasn't got too long to go as a fighter. I've said it from a while back now. The beating he took from Brandon Rios, and if you saw his face, the damage sustained, and the previous fight to Kevin Mitchell, where Mitchell knocked him out. I'm not the only one who's been saying it. There's nowhere to go for him because he can't drop down to English domestic level. He can't do that now, you know. And if he fights anywhere near European or world class, he's going to get swollen up. And apparently Murray has denied any reports that he was going to fight Scott Harrison. He's saying here, I've been in training. I had a couple of losses on the bounce. There was some damage to my eyes and my body has needed the rest. Some damage to your eyes. Them eyes look like you would someone that took a crowbar to the man's face. I'm not being horrible, but he did. Just fights with his face far too much. Far too much. And if Scott Harrison was fighting like anything like the Scott Harrison that I remember when he had a world title, even if he lost, he would bruise up John Murray badly. The facts are, there's no one at top domestic level, European level, or world-class level that he can fight without picking up excessive damage, unless he modifies his approach totally. So I don't know what he's going to do from here. And I'm not telling him to retire, because I never suggest that fighters should retire. I'm just saying what looks inevitable from here. Former IBF Super Bantamweight champion Steve Molitor has been calling out Sheffield's Kid Galahad. Let's see if Galahad takes up the challenge. Kell Brook's next opponent is Hector Saldivia from Argentina. He has a record of 41 wins, 2 losses, 32 inside the distance. I don't know much about him. It's an impressive record. And you know, if he's Argentinian, that is going to be durable and more than likely very awkward. This bout will be a final eliminator for the IBF welterweight title. Tony Bellew seems to have got away from Frank Warren as he's fighting on a Matchroom card next, which is Barry Hearn. I don't know who's managing him. He's taking on Edison Miranda. And one thing I don't like about the UK is at times people talk up fights like they're really massive fights. Like on paper, Edison Miranda should be a good workout and a good fight, but it shouldn't be no tough fight that, you know, trying to build it up like he's taking on Chad Dawson or Tavoris Cloud or someone like that. How much times have we seen Edison Miranda get his head knocked off in the ring now? Lots and lots and lots of times. And yes, Miranda does have punching power. He is quite a dangerous opponent. But anybody with any pretensions of fighting at world-class level at light heavy should be brushing him aside, either knocking him out or outboxing him easy. Tony Bellew's fellow Liverpudlian, David Price, is fighting Audley Harrison. Frank Maloney's talking that fight up as well, like it's a big, massive fight. But we have to take the facts into consideration here, yeah? Audley was blown out. Oh, in fact, let's go back before this, yeah? His fight before he fought David Haye, he was fighting Michael Sprott. Audley was losing this fight. Losing, way behind on points. And there was a few seconds left in the 12th round. And he managed to summon up, I think it was a right hand. I think it was a southpaw right. And he knocked his man out. And it was a good victory. Audley thoroughly deserved his win. But at the same time, we can't ignore that he was way behind on points to a journeyman. That's what Michael Sprott is. So he takes that win over Sprott, gets an undeserved shot at the WBA champion against David Haye, who should never have really defended his title against Audley Harrison, in all truth. Audley promised a lot, didn't deliver. Got KO'd in 3 rounds. I think he landed one decent punch in the whole 3 rounds. After that loss, he was written off so badly that his comeback fight against Ali Adams was not televised by satellite, cable, terrestrial. Nobody wanted to mess with his fight. In fact, somebody had to come with their home video camera to televise the fight. And the British media, and I'm going to include the YouTube community in that too, yeah? You are media now. And the Red Top publications and all the boxing publications, they were all saying that no promoter worth his salt is going to mess with Audley because of the no-show against David Haye, and he's going to let down your promotion. And you're going to look fraudulent for trying to sell a fight with him. Now, I don't want to diss no professional fighters because they all have their purpose. But if you go on YouTube and you watch Ali Adams fight, you're just going to see so much deficiency there. And like it's been pointed out to me, Ali Adams has never defeated a fighter with a winning record. Audley blew him out in about, was it 3 or 4 or 5 or something like that. And on the strength of that, he's fighting the Commonwealth and British heavyweight champion who they're talking about matching with the Klitschko's. They're talking about David Price in world-class terms. So the question has to be asked is, how can Audley Harrison, who just 1 fight ago was written off from fighting on big cards, how can defeating Ali Adams propel you into a big fight against the British and Commonwealth champion? How does that work? And don't get me wrong, I've got nothing against the match. What I have a problem with is how the British boxing media wrote Audley Harrison off from fighting on any big cards. And this fight is going to be on Box Nation. And how is Frank Maloney and David Price trying to talk it up as a big fight? How is Steve Bunce trying to justify this as a big fight? Like I said, I've got nothing against this fight because I don't think David Price is that good. I've got nothing against this fight. And I actually think Audley can pose David some problems. I have no problems with this fight. But when you're trying to sell me as a big fight and a big test, come on, man. Come on. I've been watching boxing for too long for you to sell me that as a big fight. Now, to me, if Tony Bellew was fighting Gabriel Campillo or something like that, I'll say, yo, this is quite a big fight. This is a big fight because Campillo has showed in his current state that he is capable of fighting and winning at world-class level. And if Bellew knocked out Campillo or beat him on points, his credibility with the knowledgeable boxing fan, and I'm going to include myself in that, I don't care what nobody says, I'm including myself in that, his credibility with us would be, whoa, all good, all good. But you see, the problem is, if he knocks out Miranda, then they're going to be talking about, oh, Tony Bellew is world class. He's brilliant. When that's not really the full picture for us to gauge an assessment like that. Is it really? Nathan Cleverly, he's another guy who Frank Warren is trying to sell his fights to us like he's a legitimate world champion. And if anybody criticizes Canelo's opponents, go and box wreck Nathan Cleverly. That's all I'm going to say, you know. You see, it's not the first time recently they've tried to do that. They tried to sell me the Matthew Hatton and Kell Brook fight as a big fight. Based on what? And like, I'm just reiterating a point. This is an original thought I'm coming up with. A lot of people on YouTube have said the same thing. Chad Dawson and Andre Ward have lived in their respective divisions' top 10s for the last 3 or 4 years. Lived in there. Just took up residency in the top 10. Yeah? And okay, Chad hasn't always shined, but he has some good victories. Tarver, Johnson, Adamek, Hopkins. He's earned a big fight, and this is a big fight. But this fight is not getting the light that a big fight deserves. That's through promoters bullshitting people, when in all truth they're selling illusions. Let me just quantify my point just a little more about British boxing selling fights to be bigger than what they actually are. When Andre Ward was in the Super 6, before he fought Arthur Abraham, I think he had a bit of doubt. Not doubt, but I think he just wanted to test himself to see how he copes fighting an inside fighter. So he takes on a non-title fight outside of the Super 6, in between the Super 6, against Sakio Bika. Now, let's get it straight. Bika has never won a world title. But he did give Joe Calzaghe a very tough night. Very tough night. He gave Lucien Bute a tough fight. And Bute was a champion. No matter how limited we think he was a champion. And he's a decent fighter. It was a very good win by Carl Froch. Bika is a hard puncher. He's a roughhouse. Never been stopped. A great gatekeeper. A great barometer to see how your prospect is coming along. Now, when Ward took on Bika, who is much tougher than Edison Miranda, much tougher opposition, right? When Ward took on Bika, that fight almost went under the radar. Nobody was talking about it like, whoa, you're taking on Sakio Bika. That's really dangerous, man. You know, this is huge. But in the UK, Tony Bellew fights somebody far less dangerous than Sakio Bika. And it's a big fight. You see where I'm coming from? Now you tell me, am I just one cynical miserable, hard to please person? Or is the expectation bar over here a little too low? I don't know, because certain things get me mad. Certain things, let's take it off boxing for a minute. Like the Olympics. Let's take 100-meter sprinting. Jamaica come first, America come second. Someone else come third in the final. And these British guys don't even make the semi-finals. And yet, they're talking to Phil Jones about their Olympic experience. No, just go home. You didn't even get in the semi-finals. I don't want to hear your name, dude. You're getting funded by the country to not get in the semi-finals. And then I'm seeing you on television. No, you shouldn't be on television. I know it sounds mean, but I genuinely mean it from my heart. You haven't done enough to warrant this interview when people are running sub 10 seconds and you're running 10:20 and 10:30 and shit like that. I don't want to hear your interview. I don't want to hear it. If you came fourth in the Olympic final, then okay. Give the boy a few words. And you see, that's me setting the bar too low. That's the influence I've got of watching us over here celebrating mediocrity. I'm trying to break out of it because fuck the fourth place. Unless you bring back some kind of medal round your neck. Bronze, gold, silver. Send him back to his running club and we have to review if he's going to get funding next time. Simple. And to be honest, if you can't run sub 10 seconds, it's not my problem. Can't get no sympathy from me. That is the standard. I mean, Tyson Gay run, was it 9.70, 9.8? Oh, rude boy. And he came back on the plane with shit. No medal. No medal. Nothing. Zip. Zero. His time. Take away the last 8 years since the rise of Usain Bolt. Tyson Gay's time would have won every single blood clot Olympics since the Olympics start. And he went home with shit. It's like, you know, across the pond, I don't look like I'm blowing smoke up their asses. I'm just telling it how it is, yeah? Don King, as we know, with Joe Frazier and Foreman, he went in the ring with the champion, and when the champion lost, he still went out the ring with the champion. A pure winning them I deal with out there, yeah? All this good loser shit, it doesn't play too well over there. Irish super middleweight Brian McGee is getting a title shot, another title shot. He's getting a title shot because Caroline Balze, a champion in recess, that's what they're calling him. I don't know what that means there, I don't know. He's been inactive for whatever reasons, injury. Here's a strange bit, I don't get this, and surely it can't be right. Is Brian McGee's manager is being allowed to choose their opponent they fight for the vacant WBA crown, as long as he's ranked in the top 15. That can't be right, surely that can't be right, man. Boxing, I'm never going to leave it, so I'm not going to say I'm walking away from it. But it just eats itself. You know what I mean? He kept saying, the sport just eats itself, man. It's just fucking incredible. George Groves is going to be sidelined because he was cut pretty badly in his last fight. Two-time Olympic gold medalist Jerzy Coolidge, he died in Poland at the age of 71. He first won the Olympics in 1964 and then in 1968. I'm assuming he was a middleweight because he beat Dick McTaggart, who was a Scottish amateur boxer. This is just all memory I'm doing again. And I'm sure Dick McTaggart did win maybe a previous Olympics at middleweight. Shannon Briggs is currently in negotiations to fight Evander Holyfield. You see, people are going to say, oh, I don't want to see that match, man. Well, you have to realize, boxing doesn't have league tables. Fighters fight who they want to fight. If boxing had the same criteria that a lot of other sports have, like only the best strikers and defenders and midfielders and goalkeepers can play in the Premiership. It doesn't have that paradigm. Anybody can play in boxing. And how can you tell what is elite level when the ratings are all about the place? A sport like boxing allows for this match. And I'm going to watch it unashamedly. Not the same way I'm going to watch Ward and Dawson, but I'm going to watch it. Because I want to. Because Briggs used to be an exciting puncher. He held a belt. And Holyfield used to be an exciting puncher. And he did more than hold a belt. He was undisputed champion. And champ on several occasions. Cruiserweight champion too. I mean, if they're going to sell me half these other bullshit fights as world title fights, why shouldn't I just watch some novelty boxing from time to time? Briggs versus Holyfield. Why not? At least it's fairly evenly matched. You know what I mean? And there's an element of fun to the match too, especially for old timers like me, as we watch if they can recapture a glimmer of the form that they used to have in their glory days. You see, boxing is like a woman you love and hate. You're going to have to ignore the shit that you hate about her to get to the love. I just basically deal with the paradigms that boxing sets for itself. Sometimes unintentionally it sets itself up. Because, okay, you get the biggest promoter in the world, Bob Arum. You get the biggest television networks who cover boxing, HBO. You get the tabloid press and all these other major boxing publications and magazines. You get all these supposedly elite websites telling you that this 6-time world champion or a double belt holder is a boring fighter because he's able to implement defense into his boxing. You're saying that these fighters are boring. So, why don't want to ever hear from you? I don't want to hear them talking about, oh, boxing used to be so great. We used to have quality fighters back in the day and this and that. And you're complaining about the standard of boxing and shit like that. I don't want to hear it from them because it's because of you why there has been climates where fights like Ward and Gatti could outshine the technicians fighting at the same time that they had their trilogy and earn more money than these technicians. So when the freak show comes along, I don't want to hear shit from you. Because instead of pushing who should be at the top into their rightful positions, you've opted for sluggers. That's what you've opted for. And I'm not saying there are no sluggers who are at the top of their chosen divisions in boxing. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying if you're going to push sluggers who are just what you call crowd pleasers ahead of the technicians who are able to deconstruct all types of styles and defend their titles on numerous occasions, if you're going to put sluggers ahead of them, then it's you who have set up the climate for freak shows. It's as simple as that. I mean, why wouldn't Shannon Briggs or Evander, why wouldn't they keep fighting and trying to win a piece of the heavyweight title when it's so fragmented and bent out of shape? Why wouldn't they? Are you telling me that Holyfield and Shannon Briggs are that much out of their mind to think they've got a long shot at beating somebody like Povetkin? No, they're not, because, yeah, more than likely they'll lose, but the way they see it, it's worth a gamble. Why not? Or maybe they're thinking they could catch Vladimir on a Lamont Brewster or a Russ Purity night. They could catch him on one of them days. Why shouldn't they? Why wouldn't they pursue their options when they have so many? I mean, when you had an undisputed fighter like Tyson, after Michael Spinks got knocked out, he didn't fight again because he knew he'd have to fight Tyson. If he wants to get the belt back, he has to fight Tyson again. When Tyson knocked out Larry Holmes, Holmes didn't come back until Tyson lost his title. And then he realized it might be a little safe to come out and play. You know what I'm saying? So basically what I'm saying is Povetkin, Vladimir and Vitaly are not scaring these old guys enough to say, look, what's the point? The risk compared to the reward is not worth it. It's like Henry Cooper, British champion. His manager, I think his name was Jim Wicks, he said, I will not let Henry on the same road as Sonny Liston, let alone put him in the ring. He actually said that. The risk compared to the reward is not worth it. Let Henry just defend his British and European titles or Commonwealth titles, and he's good with that. You know? But when Ali beat Liston and had the championship, then Henry Cooper and his management, they went for a title shot because in a previous fight they floored Ali and they knew Ali could outbox Henry, but he didn't hold the same fear factor that Liston had. So yeah, maybe if these champions, so-called heavyweight champions, were scaring these older guys into retirement, they would stay retired. But right now, they're not doing that. So we go to the Boxing News lightweight world rankings. At number 1, we have Antonio DeMarco. At number 2, Miguel Vasquez. At number 3, Ricky Burns. At number 4, Richard Abril. At number 5, Sergio Thompson. At number 6, Kevin Mitchell. At number 7, John Molina. At number 8, Gavin Reese. At number 9, we have Sharif Bogier. At number 10, John Murray. I usually do a thing where I check the ratings and I see if any of the fighters have beat any of the other fighters on the list. And this week that is redundant, as none of the fighters have faced each other or beat each other on the list. We have John Molina, who's ranked at number 7, who challenges Antonio DeMarco for his WBC crown. And that will give either man at least one scalp from this list. And I do this because in a way it's my barometer of seeing if the division is any good. It might not be foolproof, but that's the system I will be using from now. Danny Garcia and Amir Khan have some of the most impressive stats according to the Boxing Beats and Rhymes rating system. As I pointed out last week, Garcia beat Khan, Morales, and Kendall Holt, all 3 of whom was on the list. Amir Khan had beaten a couple of people on the list. Can't remember who they were. So look out for that to be a regular feature.
I'm catching the flashback.
This week, we go back to 1962. Canadian heavyweight champion Bob Cleroux was ranked number 6 contender for Floyd Patterson's heavyweight title. So it was a surprise when he was beaten on points over 10 rounds by Mike D. John, who was unranked. The fight took place in Miami Beach. Bob Cleroux had only lost to George Chuvalo, whom he'd also beaten twice. He also lost to Zora Foley, but the John, who was apparently a puncher, he won unanimously. Television coverage kept the attendance down to 2,164 at the auditorium. It's funny, I was watching a documentary the other day about Billy Walker, a British heavyweight. And you heard all these old promoters, I can't remember the names There's one of them that I should be able to remember, but the brain is not ticking there. And they was complaining because TV was just sort of making its way into boxing in the 60s, and they was complaining how it was hurting their gates and ticket sales. This next story fits perfectly with Jamaica's 50-year celebration of its independence. Dave Charnley was a top British fighter, and he was hoping for a third world title crack. So it was a big shock when he lost his Empire Commonwealth lightweight title to Bunny Grant. The fight took place in Kingston, Jamaica on the island's Independence Day, and we wrote that there could be no argument about the way Charnley lost his title. The 21-year-old Grant held the whip hand for most of the 15 rounds. Can't remember my dad ever talking about Bunny Grant, and he knew all the Jamaican fighters. So I might have to do a little research there. So this boxing news review is over, and this is where I say peace out. Peace.
Mm.